Spiritual awakening is not about remaining in an eternal bliss state for the rest of your life. The way I conceptualize spiritual awakening is that it is a crack in the structure of the personality through which is glimpsed wholeness. That glimpse is so powerful and it is so blissful that when this happens, our mind tries to grab hold of that state because it sees that the relief, the integration that happened in that glimpse was so peaceful and it wants to grab hold of that state. However, what follows is exactly the opposite. Now, first, let me explain what do I mean by the crack in the structure of the personality. So, personality is something that we build over time through our experiences, childhood conditioning, our exposure to different ideas, philosophies, the place and culture where we were born, the traditions, the schooling, the education, everything shapes up a personality. And we get a lot of ideas of what we have to do with our lives, what should be done with our life. So we move on that trajectory, that blueprint which is given to us by the society, and the society, which includes your parents, your relatives, your teachers, and everybody else who shape this personality of yours. And they promise us that if we follow the blueprint, we will be safe, we will be happy, we will be secure, and our life will be sorted from our birth till our death. However, what we find is the moment we hit the middle life, somewhere in our, maybe, there's no definite period or definite age group for that, but somewhere towards the end of our 30s and nearing around, 40s or 50s, we begin to realize that what was promised is not bringing any peace and happiness. So through a lot of struggle, strife, and suffering, ultimately there is a crack in the personality. That crack means that there is this realization that happiness comes attached with unhappiness, and this duality cannot be broken. So no matter what I desire, whatever I want in life, a good and stable, secure job, or a loving relationship, or wealth, or anything, nothing is permanent. Nothing is going to stay constant. So if we get into a loving relationship, there will be disharmony, there will be conflicts. If we get into a secure job, that security is very fickle and it will be threatened every now and then, because the nature of life, the nature of this world is constantly changing. So variables acting on us constantly change. Sometimes there are difficult financial situations. Sometimes there are challenges in interpersonal relationships. Therefore, human being is very limited in its ability to control these variables. And the more we try to control, the more we suffer. So through that suffering happens a crack in the structure of the personality, where there is this surrender. It is a deep surrender. It is a deep realization in the being that there's nothing I can do to decouple this duality of happiness and unhappiness that comes in the material world. So the thing is that yes, the wholeness is glimpsed through this crack, and wholeness does bring in a sense of unicity, a very powerful integration with everything that is. And it is blissful, it is peaceful. However, it is just a glimpse. And when that glimpse happens, there is no time, there is no thinking, there is no conceptualizing, there is only being. But then the mind comes up again because life has to be lived. And the processes of the world, with our relationships, with our job, with our work, all of those things have to happen. So what happens is, this mind is now very unsettled. In fact, for most people, awakening is a very painful process, and it starts something which has been dubbed in the spiritual literature as dark night of the soul, where there is constant confusion. There are moments of bliss and happiness, ecstatic highs. Then there are moments of debilitating loneliness and lows, depression, anxiety, stress. One constantly seeks and searches for the meaning of life, tries to find what is the purpose of life, why we are here, what is our purpose here. And we struggle and struggle and struggle, and there's pain and pain and pain. But as the Buddha said, that there is no lotus without the mud. So one has to go through this mud in order for the flowering to happen. So slowly, this is an experience that happens after awakening. One starts to receive insights. Now, these insights are not thought-based, but they are just the knowing in the being. So the insight is sometimes so powerful that a thought does not precede it. And you just know that this is the right way without analyzing it. So, for example, something that is binding you, a piece of work, a project, and you all of a sudden realize that unhappiness is going to be attached with this. So if I get attached to this piece of project or work, if I get emotionally invested in this, then it is going to bring me pain and suffering. And in that moment, without much thought, you are willing to let go of it. You are willing to release it. And you are willing to release even the discomfort of thinking that comes up and says, no, this is a good opportunity. Do not leave it. You will regret later. You just don't listen to that voice. That is the insight. Now, it is, again, not that we become perfect after awakening. Sometimes we do take on challenges and projects that cause us tremendous hurt and suffering. And then we suffer. So, through that suffering, we come to that state where we start to experience more and more peace as we let go, as we release more and more ideas, theories, and philosophies from our system, till we are fighting and resisting what is, things the way they are. We experience this constant dark night of the soul. We experience a lot of fear. We say, why are people like this? Why are they like that? Why are they not loving? Why are they not kind? Why is humanity so evil? Why are people plotting against me? You see, the dark night of the soul is all about me. It is the me which is undergoing fluctuations. Now, there are moments of relief when the me drops because the personality, which is the me, has been cracked. So the me is now not all that solid, it's not all that strong to hold on to concepts and ideas. So there are moments of relief when the me just drops, but then it still comes up and it's injured, it's hurt. So it causes a lot of pain. And some people go through a lot of debilitating depression where they don't know what is to be done, who to speak to, how to explain your inner state to someone. Now, I do recommend that some personal practices like breathing, yoga, pranayam, or going for a therapy, or talking to a loved one, or speaking to a friend, all of those things are tremendously helpful when one is going through this phase. Especially therapy can make a lot of difference too. So, do not think that you have to go through this by yourself and no help is needed. If something is too turbulent and too powerful and your body and your nervous system cannot handle it, then by all means take whatever help is necessary in the moment. However, at some point, when we gain the strength to stay with the suffering, to just be present to the suffering, we realize that there is no locus, there is no center to this suffering. In fact, the center is an illusion. So the me that says, I am suffering, it is realized, it is witnessed that this me is an illusion. And when that realization happens, which is again an impersonal realization, therefore I say that awakening and insights are all impersonal. They do not happen to a person, they just happen. So when that insight happens, there is a deep relief. And this is what Ramesh Balsekar called as deliverance. So he said awakening is something different and deliverance is something different entirely. So deliverance is basically understanding the fickleness and the illusory nature of this doer entity, me, that says that suffering is happening to me, I am suffering. Because, see, it is the nature of me to bring attention to itself. So either it will externalize by saying that people are after me, people want to disrupt my peace. I would be happy, but this world is a very unpleasant place, therefore I cannot be happy. So it puts conditions on other things, variables, people, places, environment, rather than holding space of compassion for itself in the moment about what it is feeling. So me is the resistance to what is. It says that there is feeling and I don't want to feel. So deliverance is more about awakening of the emotional centers, the capacity to be in that spaciousness where one can hold emotions and see their interplay. And that spaciousness is so powerful, it's so vast, it can hold anything and nothing can destroy it, because it is that spaciousness which puts life into these emotions. And all these emotions are doing is they are basically pointing to a story that the me is holding. So if there is anxiety or depression, the me could be holding a story of being lonely, of not being understood, of not being accepted by others, or not getting enough validation from others. So sometimes it is not very apparent in the conscious mind as to what's going on, because a lot of stuff resides in the unconscious, in the shadows. But when there is spaciousness, all of this content begins to unravel. It begins to come up into the conscious surface. And it does not always come up as direct knowledge that, okay, this was my childhood pattern and that's why I am suffering. No, it will come up as an unpleasant feeling, as a restlessness, as an irritation. And then that is the space where you can examine and be quiet. So if you have the courage to sit with your suffering and be quiet, eventually the story will also be revealed. And what is revealed is what is released. The moment that story is released from the system, there is tremendous peace. So that's why I say that true deliverance is the end of me and my story. It's just that we hold on. We try to use glimpse again. We try to go back into to experience the glimpse again in order to feel better. But the thing is, the peace that was realized during the glimpse has to be realized while living your life in this world and while doing your mundane activities. It is not that you have to sit separately and suspend all activities and then experience quietness. Quietness has to be realized while in movement, while doing things, while having, while enjoying interpersonal relationships. Even if the emotional intensity is there, at some point it is realized that I am not these emotions. These are there, and I don't have to act on them, I just have to see them. And they will play their part and leave. Do not rely on other human beings to validate these emotions for you, because then you will get into a habit of relying on something external to feel relieved, which will actually not help you. The moment you now, of course, there is a disclaimer here that if something is too turbulent and you do need to reach out to someone, a loved one or a therapist, then by all means do that. But if you are in that zone of compassionate space where you can hold these emotions, then you will see them as fickle. And rather than acting impulsively, being influenced by these emotions, what you will do is you will simply wait, let them pass, and then make your decisions, which is a very peaceful way to live. Because generally, when we take impulsive decisions simply based on our fear center, which are emotions, strong emotions, we do make decisions that we regret later. So, awakening will always bring you present in the present. So, whenever you are experiencing this intensity, you will notice that there is a sudden break and you just remain in this spaciousness. And there is this recognition that what was happening in terms of restlessness, anxiety, or any other emotion was actually not the truth. It was simply an arising, and now it has left. It has gone back to its source from where it came. So what happens is that slowly, with more and more experiences and through flow of life, one starts to become more and more present to what is without resisting it. And that changes the quality of life. That makes life more and more peaceful. That makes life joyful. That gives us the ability to truly connect with our loved ones. It gives us the capacity to be fully aware and awake and be awake and be with them, which makes a huge difference because we are not caught up with the thinking mind. Awakening is poison for the thinking mind, the obsessive mind that wants to control, that wants to guarantee one particular outcome. Things should be like this. My relationship should be like that. my work should be like this. Only when all the variables fall in the place that I want them to be, then I will be happy. That is the thinking mind. And awakening, the crack in the structure, is that space where the poison drops into the thinking mind. And then what emerges is the creative working mind, which is not concerned with thinking, which is not concerned with the outcome. It is purely based on practicality, and there is full use of the frontal lobes, and the fear center has taken a backseat. So, when the frontal lobes, when the rational part of the brain is activated with the working mind, we take better decisions and we are able to enjoy better relationships, and life becomes much more joyful and harmonious. That sort of brings an end to the dark night of the soul. Now, it is not to say that the emotions will completely be vanished. I think human organism, our biology does not allow for that. So the emotions will come up every now and then. But there is a flip to the script now. So what happened earlier, quote unquote, before awakening, was that most of your life was spent in misery and there were moments of bliss and happiness. Now, as the deliverance happens and more insights are received, the nature of the organism begins to change a little bit. So there are more periods of peace and harmony and less periods of emotional turbulence. But nonetheless, emotional roller coaster emotional turbulence is always there. It's just that it's not all that pervasive. It is not all that dominant. And even when the emotions surface, we do not cling on to those emotions. We do not try to find a solution. We do not declare them as a problem that needs a solution. We just witness them and release the pain that is attached to it, along with the story that it is carrying. And that brings peace, that brings harmony. So awakening is not about being in perpetual bliss all the time. It is not about remaining in a permanent state of consciousness, because the life and phenomenality does not allow for that. Everything here around us is constantly changing. So even this organism will go through ups and downs. It is this understanding that everything is impermanent, as the Buddha said. And then moving forward with that attitude, there is gratitude towards life and there is acceptance towards the flow of life. So if it brings pain, there is acceptance of pain. If it brings pleasure, there is acceptance of pleasure. So pleasure in the moment can be enjoyed thoroughly without clinging to it, and pain in the moment can be accepted totally without being averse to it. And that is freedom. That is total acceptance. When we create aversion towards pain, towards suffering, the suffering increases. And when we try to cling on to pleasures and crave their repetitions, then also suffering ensues. So fundamentally, the primary inquiry at the stage where one is experiencing dark night of the soul is, who am I? Who is the one experiencing dark night of the soul? Who is trying to hold on to? Who is trying to release? Who is trying to resist life? When we come to that fundamental question, there is a tremendous insight that happens. We get to know who we really are and what is our natural state. And then it seems like a joke because we say that we never realized it was this simple. It did not need so much philosophizing. It did not need so much psychological analysis. It did not need so much thinking to figure this out. All it needed was a quiet mind. All it needed was presence. So when we are in that presence, there is total acceptance of what is. And that is true deliverance.